It was a quiet Saturday evening in La Crosse, Wisconsin, October 1953. The kind of night when families went out for dinner, teenagers listened to the radio, and the streets became quiet as the sun disappeared. 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley had plans of her own. She was a high school student. She was responsible. And that night, she had agreed to babysit a 20-month-old girl at the home of a college professor and his wife. It was supposed to be an ordinary babysitting job, a few hours of watching a sleeping child, maybe some homework, maybe a little music on the radio, and then home. Evelyn had no reason to believe that she would never see her family again. She had no idea that before the night was over, someone would enter that house, and when they left, they would take Evelyn with them. But they would leave something behind: blood, broken glasses, 2 shoes, an open basement window, and a question that has survived for more than 70 years. How does a 15-year-old girl disappear from a house while the baby she was watching remains completely unharmed? Evelyn Grace Hartley was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and was a sophomore at Central High School. She was described as a bright and well-liked teenager. Her father, Richard Hartley, was a biology professor at La Crosse State College, and that connection was what brought Evelyn to the Rasmussen family's home that night. Professor Viggo Rasmussen, who worked with Richard Hartley, needed someone to look after his 20-month-old daughter while he and his wife attended a football game. Their regular babysitter wasn't available, so Richard suggested his daughter. Evelyn agreed, and sometime that evening, she arrived at the Rasmussen home. The baby was put to bed. Evelyn settled in. She had brought school books with her. She intended to study while the child slept. There was nothing unusual about the arrangement. In fact, everything about the beginning of the night sounds almost painfully normal. That is what makes what happened next so disturbing. Because there was no warning, no obvious confrontation, no known enemy, no telephone call threatening Evelyn, no stranger knocking on the door. Just a teenage girl, alone in a house, with a sleeping baby. And then, sometime during the evening, something happened. Evelyn had told her father that she would call home around 8:30 that night, but the call never came. At first, that wasn't necessarily alarming. Maybe she was busy. Maybe the baby had woken up. Maybe she had simply lost track of time. So her father tried calling the Rasmussen home. There was no answer. He called again. Still nothing. Eventually, his concern became something much more serious. Richard Hartley got into his car and drove to the Rasmussen residence. It was only about 1.5 miles away. When he arrived, the house was dark and silent. He knocked. Nobody answered. He tried again. Nothing. Then he looked through a window, and what he saw immediately changed everything. Inside the living room, he could see Evelyn's eyeglasses and one of her shoes. They were not where you would expect them to be. They were lying on the floor, as though something had happened suddenly. Richard tried the doors. They were locked. The first-floor windows were locked too. His daughter was inside, or at least she should have been, but she wasn't answering. Then Richard noticed something. A basement window was open, and the screen had been removed. There were footprints beneath it. Richard entered through the basement window, and inside the house, he found Evelyn's other shoe. Now there were 2 shoes, 2 different places, a pair of broken glasses, and no Evelyn.
Then he found the baby. She was still asleep, alive, unharmed, exactly where she was supposed to be. That detail would haunt investigators, because whoever had taken Evelyn had apparently left the 20-month-old child behind. The house itself looked wrong. There were signs of a struggle. The living room rugs appeared disturbed. Evelyn's glasses were broken. Her shoes had been separated. And outside the basement window, there was blood.
not just a tiny spot. There was enough blood to make investigators immediately consider the possibility that Evelyn had been seriously injured. The evidence continued into the yard. Investigators found bloodstains outside the house. A bloody handprint was reportedly found on a nearby garage. Other stains were discovered on a neighboring property, and the blood was consistent with Evelyn's blood type. The evidence suggested something terrible. Evelyn had not simply walked away. Someone had taken her, and apparently she had fought.
Police arrived, then more officers, then the sheriff's department, then volunteers, and before long, La Crosse was no longer dealing with a missing teenager. It was dealing with a possible abduction. Searchers spread across the area. Cars were checked, roads were searched, fields were searched, wooded areas were searched, dogs were brought in, aircraft were used. Hundreds of people joined the search. Eventually, the number would reach into the thousands. It became one of the largest searches in Wisconsin history. But the first major question remained unanswered. Where had Evelyn gone? Investigators believed she had been taken through the basement window. The physical evidence seemed to point in that direction. There were footprints, there was blood, the missing screen, and signs suggesting someone had entered or exited through the window. The blood trail continued away from the house, and tracking dogs were brought in to follow Evelyn's scent. The dogs followed the trail for roughly 2 blocks. Then, they stopped. The scent disappeared, just like Evelyn. Think about that for a moment. A 15-year-old girl disappears from a house. There is evidence of violence. There is blood. There are footprints. There is a trail leading away. Dogs follow that trail. And then suddenly, nothing. No body. No confirmed vehicle. No confirmed destination. No ransom demand. No message. No phone call. No explanation. Just silence. And that silence would last for decades. But the investigators didn't stop. They began looking for witnesses, and people came forward. Some claimed they had heard screams. Others reported seeing suspicious activity. One account described seeing a girl who may have been Evelyn in the back of a speeding vehicle. But eyewitness reports from a chaotic night are difficult to prove, and none of these reports produced a definitive answer. Then investigators began finding possible evidence farther from the Rasmussen house. Blood-stained clothing was discovered in different locations. A jacket was found with blood that reportedly matched Evelyn's blood type. Other clothing items were recovered, and investigators eventually found a pair of men's shoes with a distinctive sole pattern that reportedly resembled footprints found near the Rasmussen house. If those shoes belonged to the person who abducted Evelyn, they could have been one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. But again, there was a problem. There was no definitive identification of the person who wore them. The shoes could tell investigators something about the person they were looking for, but they couldn't tell them who that person was. And then the investigation became enormous. Police questioned people across the region. More than 3,500 people were reportedly questioned during the year following Evelyn's disappearance. At one point, investigators even planned mass lie detector testing involving students and faculty. The scale of the investigation was extraordinary, but the result was not. No confirmed killer, no confirmed kidnapper, no body, no confession that could be verified, and no explanation for why Evelyn had been targeted. As the months passed, the case began generating theories. One of the most persistent involved a man who would later become infamous, Ed Gein. In 1957, 4 years after Evelyn disappeared, authorities arrested Gein in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Because of his location and other circumstances, investigators questioned whether he might somehow have been connected to Evelyn's disappearance. But Gein denied involvement. He passed lie detector tests, and searches of his property found no evidence linking him to Evelyn. Authorities eventually announced that he had been cleared of connection to her disappearance. That distinction is extremely important. There is no established evidence that Ed Gein abducted or killed Evelyn Hartley. His connection to the case remains a theory, not a solved explanation. Yet the association has continued to surround the case for decades, and in recent popular culture, the connection became even more visible. But the real story is much more frustrating. There is no proven answer. There is another disturbing possibility. What if the person who took Evelyn knew the house? What if they had watched the family? What if they knew when the parents would leave? What if they knew Evelyn would be alone? Or what if the attack was completely opportunistic? The evidence doesn't give us a definitive answer, but the fact that the baby was left unharmed suggests that Evelyn may have been the specific target. And that raises another question. Why Evelyn? Was she followed? Was she watched? Did she know her attacker? Was the attacker a stranger? Was this a planned kidnapping? Or did something happen that night that investigators never understood? There isn't enough evidence to answer any of those questions with certainty, and that is exactly what makes the case so haunting. Imagine being Richard Hartley. Your teenage daughter tells you she'll call you at 8:30. You wait. The phone never rings. You call her. No answer. You drive to the house. The doors are locked. You look through a window and see her glasses. Then one shoe. You enter through a basement window. You find the other shoe. You find blood. And then you discover that the baby she was supposed to be watching is still asleep. But your daughter is gone. Not missing from a school, not missing from a crowded street, not missing after getting into a car, gone from inside a house, with evidence suggesting violence. That was the reality the Hartley family faced that night, and they would never get the answer they wanted. The search continued. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Searchers examined roads and fields. Investigators followed leads. People reported suspicious vehicles. Possible sightings were investigated. Some suspects were questioned. Some people even confessed. But their stories did not lead investigators to Evelyn. And slowly, the public attention began to fade. But the Hartley family didn't have the luxury of forgetting, because every unanswered question remained. Where was Evelyn? Was she alive? If she wasn't, where was her body? Who had taken her? Why? And perhaps the most painful question of all, did she know the person who took her?
Years passed, then decades. Evelyn's parents eventually moved away from Wisconsin, but the case remained. The newspaper archives remained. The missing person records remained. The unanswered questions remained. And every few years, someone would return to the story. A new witness, a new theory, a new piece of information, a new attempt to understand what happened on that October night. But nothing produced the definitive answer. The La Crosse Public Library's historical archive still describes Evelyn's disappearance as an unsolved case, and notes that the evidence indicated she was taken against her will. More than 70 years later, Evelyn Hartley has never been found. And perhaps that is what makes this case different from so many other disappearances. There is no clean ending, no dramatic confession, no body discovered years later, no courtroom, no verdict, no final scene where the mystery suddenly makes sense. Instead, there is only a house, a sleeping baby, a pair of broken glasses, two shoes left in different rooms, blood leading outside, footprints beneath an open basement window, a trail that disappears after 2 blocks, and a 15-year-old girl who vanished into the night. More than 7 decades have passed. People who knew Evelyn personally are now gone. The world she lived in has disappeared. The streets have changed. Technology has changed. Police investigations have changed. But the question hasn't, because somewhere inside this case, there is an answer. Someone knows what happened. Someone may have known where Evelyn was taken. Someone may have seen something that night and never spoken about it. Or perhaps, the person responsible is long gone, and the truth disappeared with them. There is one final detail that makes the case especially chilling. Evelyn had gone to that house because someone needed a babysitter. It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. She wasn't walking through a dark alley. She wasn't meeting a stranger. She wasn't traveling alone.
She was sitting inside a house, watching a sleeping child, and somehow, that was enough to make her disappear. The baby survived, the house remained, her belongings remained, her family remained, but Evelyn did not come home. So imagine that night one last time. The parents leave, the door closes, the car disappears down the street. Inside the house, Evelyn is alone with the sleeping baby. Maybe she's reading. Maybe the radio is playing. Maybe she's looking at the clock, waiting for 8:30. Maybe she is thinking about school. Maybe she's already planning what she'll do the next morning. Then, something changes. A sound, a movement, a person. We don't know. But whatever happened next happened quickly enough that Evelyn's glasses were broken. Her shoes were left behind. Blood appeared inside the house. The basement window was open, and someone carried or dragged her away. The dogs followed her scent. 2 blocks. Then nothing. And that is where the trail ends. October 1953. One ordinary babysitting job. One extraordinary disappearance. No ransom, no body, no confirmed suspect, no answer. Just a mystery that has survived for more than 70 years. And perhaps the most terrifying possibility isn't that Evelyn disappeared without a trace. It's that someone knows exactly what happened to her. Someone may have known where she was taken. Someone may have known where she ended up. And yet, the truth has never come out. So after all these years, one question remains. Who took Evelyn Hartley from that house? And perhaps an even darker question, was she targeted that night? Or was she simply in the wrong place when someone decided to make her disappear? We don't know. And after more than 70 years, Evelyn Hartley is still missing. Her story remains unsolved. And somewhere in the silence between the last moment anyone saw her and the moment her father found those broken glasses is the answer. But nobody has ever been able to find it.